It is Wednesday, my dudes.
Geek out! Hey, welcome to another installment of Catching Up. I'm Sam.
I'm Chris.
I'm Jake.
And this week we've got Jeremy Haun and Seth Peck on the show to talk about their new Image comic series, The Realm, out in comic book stores everywhere on Wednesday, September 13th, or on Comixology if you're more digitally inclined. This is actually Jeremy's second time on the show. He was here to talk about The Beauty with Mr. Calaveras. But, let's let them talk about their book. And joining us this week, we have Seth Peck and Jeremy Haun. They're here to talk about their new Image comic series, The Realm. It's kind of this prodigious blend of post-apocalyptic fantasy. I mean, it's everything, man.
That's right. It's got it all.
It's got you want to see orcs get stabbed with bayonets and then shot?
Oh, yeah.
Then, hey, you came to the right place.
Oh, that's the best thing ever.
But, and of course, we've had Jeremy on before talking about The Beauty. And, this is Seth's first time into the madness that is Geek Out.
Sorry. It is, yes, thank you.
First and probably last.
Well, that may be more on me than you. We'll see.
Well, challenge accepted.
Let's make sure we do our jobs then, gentlemen.
Yes.
And Seth, Jeremy, thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us, yeah.
So let's start with the big picture. How did this prodigious blend of everything from orcs to magic to steampunk to dudes in just fucking awesome leather jackets in a post-apocalyptic world come about?
I've been working on The Beauty for nearly 2 years now, and it is a very specific, current-ish procedural story. And I drew a lot of people wearing regular clothes, doing regular things like blowing up and shooting each other. And I decided, that I really wanted to do something that challenged me, and it was just me, the culmination of me drawing everything that I love all in one book. It's The Realm.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's, that makes creator-owned comics such an attractive medium for people is that you really can, do whatever you want. There's not really it's almost the opposite of, working for one of the bigger companies, which are, 99% superhero or maybe 100%. There's very few superhero comics when you go outside of that. And one of the things you see is that, across the board, you see, Westerns, and you see horror, and you see, books like The Walking Dead, or, books that sort of defy being described, like Saga or Paper Girls, or any of those kind of books that Image does, where you're pretty much limited by what's interesting to you. What do you want to write? What do you want to draw? And so there's really no excuse when you sit down to do something. You might as well throw everything you want in there, and that's kind of what Jeremy and I did. It's a little bit of everything we enjoy. We're lucky enough, I hope, to have come up with a framework where it all kind of hangs together and fits. But we were able to play with every kind of toy we wanted. I think maybe short of science fiction, I don't, yet anyways. There's maybe not any of that in it, but we've got stuff that we'd like to do that touches on Westerns and crime and horror and, the obvious ones of fantasy and, the post-apocalyptic sort of environment. But, it's our chance to kind of do whatever we wanted. And, there's not really anyone to tell us no. So far, we've just kind of keep throwing stuff in there.
Now, if I remember correctly, Seth, you had worked on Sorrow, which was kind of a post-apocalyptic meditation in itself, and of course, The Beauty. I wouldn't call it post-apocalyptic, but there is a widespread sense of dystopia as people are willing to trade their livelihood and health to bang and look really good for a couple years or so.
It's a feel-good dystopian book. Yeah,
in more ways than one.
It's about all the benefits and upside of STDs.
Yeah.
So
yes. What is it about those narratives that really drive you to futures or settings where shit's gone awry?
I just blame Mad Max, right? I mean, that's
I think that's where we all started, right? I mean, I think everybody's got a sort of a Mad Max crush, and if they didn't, I think Fury Road probably gave them one. But I think for me, as a writer, as a creator, the interesting thing is that in an apocalypse or in a where you said shit's kind of gone wrong, you see everybody with their back against the wall. Everybody is kind of their worst case scenario, and it's sort of revealing in terms of what would you do if driven to this point, or what would you don't have to go through the process of watching someone's world fall apart. We kind of jump in it, and everybody's world fell apart at the same time. So everybody is acting, for better or for worse, probably the way we'd all like to act down at the bottom, or the way we'd all act if we didn't have anything like rules and society and morals and stuff restraining us. So I think you get to, it ratchets up the drama, it ratchets up the tension and the action, and you get to have people act out their inner ugliness and their inner, I think their good side too. I mean, a lot of people rise to the occasion, and that's kind of what the book is about. Who rises to the occasion, why they rise to the occasion, and sort of ask yourself, what would you do in this situation? What would you do to not just survive, but what's going to give your life meaning, or what's your purpose when sort of the 9-to-5 real world isn't around anymore.
Yeah, the best purpose is just to fuck up dragons. That's the whole. Yeah.
Are you guys big?
Yeah, I think
yeah.
Everybody like to shoot at monsters. I think if they, it's sort of like getting to live in a video game. If you can, just don't get eaten or murder.
There is kind of again the orcs kind of give it a Warhammer 40K sense, and I feel like in both the Realm and the Beauty there was like these big hulking figures that you didn't like. There was the Destroyer of Worlds here, and there was the I'm trying to remember what he had, like the skull mask.
Oh,
and
Mr. Calaveras?
Mr. Calaveras.
Yeah.
The greatest creation. I remember we geeked out so hard about him.
Yeah. What is it about creating like just these intimidating badasses? Like oh, this is the guy that we should like not mess with like at all. Like, is that kind of a product of enjoying like horror films, or just that you just need that clear, visible heavy from jump?
I think that's like horror films or just growing up with comics. I think that the idea of good and bad is a fantastic starting point, and then you can kind of play with all of the areas of gray in between. You start to realize that not to take it over to Calaveras and to the Beauty very much, but like Hurley and I just wrote issue 17, which is a one shot just focusing on Calaveras. Yes. And you get to go back and you get to see this monster, but then you kind of get to see this one thing about him, and you're like, oh shit, he's human under there. And whether it's Calaveras in the Beauty or Johnny Eldritch in the Realm, or the orcs or Redjaw or whoever these all of our multiple bad characters are, you get to kind of slowly learn that there's more to them than just being evil. My favorite bad guy in media in years is Al Swearingen from Deadwood, and he's a bad guy, but he's also remarkably lovable, and that's kind of fun to play with too.
Yeah, I think you sort of measure your hero by what they're up against. Your competition is sort of how you can gauge your actions, and I think what we try to do is set up the kind of, I've got dogs barking in the background there. We try to set up the kind of villains that would be a challenge to our heroes and sort of make their struggle worthwhile. But I think then we also thought of okay, we've got these orcs and these monsters, let's make something they're afraid of. So on both sides of it, I think you're going to see some people that are kind of terrifying in their own way. I mean, in the first issue, we see the orcs are afraid of someone. There's someone that is kind of the boogeyman to the orcs, and it's kind of one of the things Jeremy and I have had fun with, is sort of building these layers of villains and levels of evil, so that the Johnny Eldritch who we meet in the first arc isn't necessarily. We know right off the bat he's not the big bad, but he's not even the only sort of servant of the big bad. So as we go along, we'll meet more of those kind of people, and some guys that start off seeming like the bad guy might turn out to be pretty good, and some of the guys that start off pretty good might wind up pretty bad, or dead, or
just dead all the time.
Yeah, some of them don't make the curtain call. So with the protagonist, our POV character in this, Nolan, very much kind of beaten down, very much kind of like he's seen the world. He's, there's a sense of defeat. Is this opening arc basically going to be kind of his call to arms, or making him kind of like give a shit and kind of rise against the pressures of this life that he's been thrust into for the past 15 years?
Yeah, I think that is part of what you'll see. I think you'll see how he interacts with some of the other characters. We really try to make it build into sort of an ensemble piece, and with a cast where everybody kind of has not just a role they fill, but the interactions between them will mean something. And I think you see Nolan, who, like you said, he's kind of beaten down, and he's really, Jeremy and I kind of envisioned him when we started as, the story picks up, about a decade, a little more than that, after this event where all these monsters have appeared. And, who's surviving in a world like that? Who's actually kind of making a living, and who's not necessarily thriving, but who operates in a world like that and does so fairly competently. And it's got to be, I think, a guy that's pretty grounded and, a pragmatist and, a smart kind of savvy guy that's not necessarily real emotional. And I think that's kind of the way he is. I think of him as sort of a, maybe not jaded, but a pretty insulated guy. There's things that he cares about, and we'll see that, but he definitely starts off being I'm very much on my own side, and this is how I live here. And, that will kind of break down a little bit as he, find something to care about, I guess.
I'm assuming you mentioned building the world and kind of expanding the cast. I assume we're going to get a ragtag, perhaps, set of misfits and rapscallions that are forced to come together against a greater threat.
What? No.
Yeah. I would say don't get used to any of them. Don't get too comfortable with any of them, though, because it's definitely it's something we've set up to be sort of a changing group of misfits and outcasts. So, we tried to make sure that there's a definite threat of mortality out there. Not to say that it's every other issue there's going to be someone dying, but it's definitely a hopefully the kind of world in which there's some consequence. So
right,
we'll see.
Well, and a lot, and we really wanted to, as we're mashing up, the post-apocalyptic stories with stuff like Dungeons and Dragons and Lord of the Rings and everything. We really wanted that group of adventurers on a quest thing, and we're going to have that group of people, and they all kind of fit to a degree, one way or another, kind of fit elements of the archetypes of a classic D&D party, sort of, then we kill them all. That's just how it goes.
I mean, I think everybody forgets that, or maybe doesn't know that even in the original Magnificent Seven, only 3 of the 7 survive.
Right.
I guess that's how you kind of build stakes. Not even the coolest, not even Charles Bronson or James Coburn. Spoilers for a 50-year-old film, 55. But
that's fair.
Yeah. I think that kind of builds the sense of stakes. But especially with somebody like Nolan, who sees this kind of, here comes the new boss, same as the old boss moment in the beginning of the series, and he's just this is just how it always goes, So it'll be interesting to see him if he can play nice with others.
Yeah, it's definitely, I guess that's sort of been seen in other films and sort of in that genre of apocalyptic, survival is, what's the price to care about other people? Is it necessary? Do you have to care about something to give yourself motivation to survive, or is it a weakness? And I guess it's different for everybody, but that's one of the things I think we try to keep in mind is that, caring about somebody can motivate you to do something heroic, and it can motivate you to do something stupid. Probably in all of our own lives, I'm sure we've all done stupid things for people we care about. So, when the stakes are a little higher, that's kind of one of the things I think that hopefully is fun to look at.
Yeah. And I mean, again, what I love about this, especially with this opening issue, is it's a post-apocalyptic. Have we seen elements of this in fiction before? Sure, but have we seen them all blended so beautifully together? No, not really. You know, we haven't seen these steampunk elements. We haven't seen these like mysticism. Like we haven't seen like the orcs or any of that. Dragons, of course. All within a bombed out city. We seen bombed out cities? Yeah, but we haven't. You know, we've all seen the Omega Men, but we haven't seen like the Omega Men with orcs. We haven't seen it with dragons, and I think you guys it's a very interesting world that you guys have created.
I think that Jeremy can probably speak to this. I think that that's one of his strengths as an artist, is that he can create these worlds that are able to look like something you feel almost like you've seen before, because they've got a lot of realistic elements, but they can also have things like you said, dragons and orcs, and be fantastic and kind of grounded at the same time. And he thinks all these environments through so thoroughly in such detail that I think it really helps sort of. It pulls you in to the story and lets you kind of see that kind of insanity and weirdness without ever taking you out of it by seeming, only half realized. So maybe Jeremy can probably speak a little better as to his thought process when he designs these places. But he puts such thought into it that it certainly makes the writing much easier.
Well, I think that when we set out to work on this book, we talked a lot about the nature of post-apocalyptic stories, but especially the nature of fantasy stories, especially fantasy comic books. And I've read a ton of amazing fantasy novels. I've seen a few really good fantasy movies, but I haven't read a lot of really great fantastic fantasy comic books. There are a few. I dig Rat Queens right now. I dig a lot of the fantasy stuff like Skull Kickers that Jim Zub's doing. But, especially like, the old Dungeons and Dragons comic books and stuff like that, they were kind of rough. And a lot of the problem that I always had with it was identifying with the world that we're set into in those. You meet like Rathladar Longcatcher, and he lives in the city of wherever the hell it is, my limited making up fantasy cities, I can't do it right now. But
we actually have a city called Mola at some point, don't we?
Yeah, that's what we added.
I'm writing it down right now.
That's the underwater city.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But having this story have such strong fantasy elements, like the dragons and the orcs and the wizards and the crazy, Lovecraftian horrors and everything that we're sticking in it. Setting that against the backdrop of a burned out Chicago, it's so much more identifiable. We've been to Chicago. We know what it looks like. We understand that world. And then there's this alien thing that's terrible. And that was something that we really felt like we could build from. It's a lot of fun to draw an attack going on in a mall somewhere or whatever it is with a creature that shouldn't be there attacking them. It sets the stakes in a much more understandable way.
It just occurs to me, in the sake of, Jeremy, you've revealed your favorite antagonist. Seth, who is yours?
My favorite antagonist in the book or in comics, or I missed part of that, I think.
Jeremy was talking about Deadwood. Who is?
All-time favorite villain, huh? Man, gosh, that's tough. I like kind of heroes that are questionable. I love James Elroy as a novelist, and I don't think there's a single character in a James Elroy book that's really a decent human being. It's sort of all shades of being awful, and you end up rooting for the guy who's maybe the least awful. So I would say there's a few characters in James Elroy novels I really like. I like Al Swearingen. Jaime Lannister is probably my favorite character, in popular media today. Mm-hmm. He's obviously much more of he kind of becomes more heroic over the arc, but of the character. But I think he's a pretty good example of a guy that's certainly morally questionable, but capable of good things. Gosh, that's a pretty good question. I don't know. I'm Magneto in comics. I think has always been a great villain, just because I think he's believable. You know, I think if we were in that world, a lot of us would identify with that sort of wanting vengeance against this persecution. And I think you have to be a good villain, or to be a villain that's not going to suck the person right back out of the story. I think they need to be somebody who you could kind of identify with a little bit. And sometimes I think maybe more so than the good guy. You know, a lot of times good guys are more two-dimensional than villains. They tend to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. But the bad guy, if he's good, we kind of see why he's doing it and sympathize with him a little bit.
Seth, since you had invoked Magneto, you had a stint writing the X-Men. I was wondering, what is it that draws you to writing ensembles, which the Realm is working its way towards as well?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that's interesting for me as a writer to work with a cast of characters versus kind of focusing on one guy is it sort of lets you flex different parts of your personality, unless it just so happens that the lead character acts just like you would. You get to sort of have one of the characters sort of act in a carry out one side of your personality, and another character may have one of the the kinder side of your personality, or I think it just lets you maybe find more to hook into as a writer. I don't know what necessarily that I wouldn't say that the characters in comics often aren't three-dimensional. I mean, there certainly are plenty that are, but a lot of times they are fairly cut and dry. And so maybe there's not as much to grasp onto as a creator for me. And so with something that has a little bit more of a cast, it's hard for me to get bored writing this many characters and have this much stuff going on. It's easy to kind of jump around and keep myself interested and keep myself engaged. So I don't know. I think maybe just I'm one of those kids that probably played with 90% of the toy box versus maybe just having a favorite action figure. So I think maybe it just lets me entertain myself maybe, and then hopefully that translates to entertaining somebody else.
Of course. It does kind of. I do like stuff like Midnight Run, where you see people that wouldn't normally interact kind of play off each other, and so it'll be interesting to see that kind of moving forward. So moving forward with the series, what can we expect in the Realm? Can we, with issue 2 and on forth, are we going to start to see the band come together, so to speak?
Yeah, we really. I mean, we managed to my chagrin, the group gets together pretty quickly, and then I'm drawing 8 people walking around together a lot. Yeah, we've got by issue 2. Honestly, a lot of it's in place, and they continue to pick up people along the way, and the cast really rounds out. I'm currently drawing number 5 now. I just started working on that, and everything is in place. That's the last issue of the first arc, and it gets pretty big by the end there. We have a huge set piece.
There's a lot of moving pieces in that first arc, but we wanted to try and get everybody into play and sort of bring them together, and by the end of the first arc, give everybody sort of a big sort of culmination of action and see everything kind of brought together before we sort of smash some pieces and move them around. And I know for Jeremy, I feel bad because there are, like he said, there's a lot of scenes where there's 8 of the main characters are in this scene, so there's a lot of drawing involved. There's not a lot of just 2 characters interacting in an empty environment. There's a lot of 8 guys fighting 15 goblins or half a dozen orcs, but we do in the 6th issue, which is what I'm working on right now. We're kind of stepping back, and it's a much smaller sort of just 2 character piece that sort of I wouldn't say it's a breather, but it definitely will kind of give give people a little chance to get to know a couple of the characters better, and it has owlbears in it if you like owlbears. So
yeah.
Everybody likes owlbears.
They're right up there with bugbears, absolutely.
Right.
Now, at that pace, are we going to see any flashbacks into how this world came about, or kind of flesh out any of the backstories, or is it really just kind of hit the ground running for this opening arc?
We hit the ground running really hard. We always talk about the possibility of going back and understanding more. We have done a little bit of how would we? I guess we've done some little viral marketing things here and there that kind of give hints about what happened to the world and why it's happening, and we're sprinkling those around. I haven't really talked about it much, so you can.
Yeah, I think we're conscious as fans of comics and movies and stuff. We all we want to give people enough answers that they don't feel lost, or the questions will be raised that yes, they'll have answers, and I want it to feel satisfying for people. But like Jeremy said, we did hit the ground running because I also know that we've all read and seen enough things that most consumers of comics and stuff are pretty prepared to they're pretty prepared to kind of jump in and follow a story. So we didn't really want to spend a whole bunch of time setting stuff up when it's really not the interesting part of the story. The Walking Dead is a good example of something that didn't you didn't have to sit through the whole zombie uprising, and they let you kind of start and pick up kind of after that's already happened. So it's one of the reasons why we didn't start with the actual event that where these monsters come through. We sort of pick up a decade after, because I think it's more interesting to see how people are surviving than to watch issue after issue of a bunch of confused people running around getting killed. So we wanted to kind of set the protagonist and the antagonist off on a little more equal footing. I think they're probably humanity's still at a disadvantage, but the guys that are around are the hardier of the group, of the survivors.
Now, in 2 years, we are going to release Fear the Realm, and it'll actually go back and start and tell the story of everybody from the beginning. It'll be in California though, so
of course.
Yeah, we will. I mean, we actually, we do have some stuff that we've talked about going back and kind of filling in, and the parts of that are interesting, but we didn't want to do it just for the sake of feeling like we'd been completionists. We wanted to make people care about stuff and be interested. And I guess that's sort of the trick, or that's sort of the challenge, I guess, there, is to give people enough to be interested, but not so much that they aren't wanting to come back for more answers. So
right. Well, here's the big question that we ask everybody that comes on the show. What are you guys currently geeking out over?
Jeremy, you are much more of Jeremy consumes a little bit of everything. I'm pretty, I wouldn't say picky. I just don't have a ton of time between, I teach full time, and I just am not around a TV or computer that much. So Jeremy, you go first, and I'll think about what I'm geeking out over.
The two things that I'm geeking out over, I've got a couple podcasts that I'm really nuts for, and they're both D&D podcasts. So I'm doing the Adventure Zone podcast. It's a D&D podcast, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. Also, Nerd Poker from Brian Posehn,
Nice.
Another D&D podcast. They're just sitting around having fun playing D&D.
You know who?
And was it?
I was going to say, you know who recently in the comic community took a deep dive down the D&D hole? Matt Hawkins.
Who is that?
Matt Hawkins from Top Cow is like hardcore now about some tabletop Dungeons and Dragons.
Is he a 5th edition guy, or is he like hardcore, like he's playing like original AD&D?
I don't know if he's working with pencil and paper. I've seen him with like model figurines and like boards. So I don't know.
The digital D&D launched today, didn't it? I think.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. I heard about that. That's awesome. Seth, you're a crazy D&D fan.
Yeah, I'm a huge board game geek. I probably own I don't know, 250 board games. I read tons of role-playing game books. Ones I don't play even. I just like the books. But board games I'm geeking out over quite a bit. You mentioned Warhammer earlier. I'm currently kind of geeking out on the new Warhammer. And TV-wise, Twin Peaks. I'm a big Twin Peaks fan. I've been watching that.
Mm-hmm.
Have you
Game of Thrones? I like Game of Thrones.
Have you seen Will Wheaton's YouTube channel where he goes like crazy on board games and tabletop games?
Yeah, he's got a oh gosh, what's the show called? He's got I think it's a TV show even. They do some episodes.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm a huge board game fan. A little bit of everything. I mean, I like some of the tabletop miniature games, like I said, Warhammer. And then I'm a big there's an author I'm a huge geek on is Laird Barron. He kind of does weird fiction, horror, little bit of everything. But I feel like I kind of found gold when I discovered him. And I try to get everybody to read him because I feel like he's I don't know. I wouldn't know how to describe him other than he might be outside of Zoe, maybe my favorite author. So I'm constantly reading anything he puts out, and I even go back and reread a lot of his stuff. But
I've been playing a ridiculous amount of Friday the 13th on Xbox with my son. So
That's
that is
right.
bad parenting.
or
it's
the best parenting.
Yeah. I'm the cool dad. Unless he finds out.
I love that game. I play it on my PC. It's wonderful.
I haven't played it.
It's so much fun. It really is.
I'm still playing Destiny. I'm excited for Destiny 2, but I like Destiny, and I play a little bit of Overwatch, and I have an 8-year-old, and he plays Overwatch and a few other games, but I have not seen Friday the 13th.
Yeah. My 13-year-old probably is a little too young to be playing it, but he's a horror nut, and we each have an Xbox, and so we get on and just we hunt each other down. You know, one of us is Jason, and the other one's a counselor. And
I'm sure it's very therapeutic
for him.
Yeah.
Somehow he's always Jason, and I'm always running from him. It's yeah. And he's a brutal little bastard. He really he has no mercy.
I'm also I like 6-scale figures, and I'm actually currently sort of working on a 6-scale realm, one of the characters from the realm. So I'm not the most dexterous person. I've got giant hands, but I've sort of been learning to paint miniatures and build these figures and stuff over the last year. And I probably post some pictures pretty soon, but I've got a 6-scale realm figure that's kind of actually coming together much better than I expected. So I guess maybe I'm geekier than I thought I was. Gosh, now that I start saying it,
what a bunch of nerds.
I know, yeah. I'm sort of
on Geek Out.
A little bit of everything. I think maybe I just wasn't thinking about television shows as much, but I think I might geek out over.
We did have somebody on the show geek out about making milk plastic.
Yeah.
So you're in good company.
Milk. Nice. I've been making overnight oatmeal. That's my other. That's my. That's kind of my thing that I've seem to be eating every day now. So gosh, maybe I geek out a little bit of every aspect of life has some sort of obsessiveness to it.
Isn't that the best thing though now? I mean, really, like, you know, we make these things, we create comics, and then that allows us to buy our toys and video games and movies and, you know, make our overnight oatmeal. It's a perfect world.
If you want to,
I think my tabletop obsession, I think we can actually trace to the Realm, because I think several years ago when we started talking about the Realm, we have a friend that owns a comic book store where Jeremy lives in Joplin that carries board games, and somehow the idea of the Realm as a board game came up, and as I started kind of looking into board games and discovering they weren't, all Monopoly and stuff, I sort of went down that rabbit hole, and several years later, and I wouldn't care to calculate the amount of money. I've got a closet full of board games and an insane number of Kickstarter backing things that I've done on board games, and I sort of went fully committed, really leaned into it. So,
well, I think it started a lot with the Cool Mini or Not games, the Zombicide, Black Plague, and stuff like that. We were just talking about these amazing games with these little miniatures that are just fantastic, and like, we want to do that. And so it spun out of there for both of us, because I'm nowhere near as obsessive as Seth is, but I definitely have picked up a lot of board games lately too.
We're kind of in a tabletop renaissance, and I have zero pull with this, zero. But Skybound does do board games.
Oh, do they? Yeah, I think they. IDW does some board games too.
Well, we can't endorse the competition.
Oh, I see. I picked up a board game. I won't say its name, but I noticed that I'm going to get the name wrong, but it's Riccardo Bercelli. He's the artist on DMZ.
You can totally say what the name of the board game is, by the way.
I think it's called Wasteland Delivery Express. I'll probably get it wrong here, but he did all the art on it, so it kind of caught my eye just based on that. But there's some very cool stuff going on out there. I don't know if you guys have seen Kingdom Death Monster, but that's a whole sort of I wouldn't even know how to describe it, but it's sort of like playing a nightmare.
Sounds awesome.
It's lots of tentacles and eyeballs and genitals.
Sign me up.
Yeah, there's kind of everything. I was building one of the miniatures for it, and it has all these tentacles, and I was kind of noticing one of them and thought that's pretty much it's a penis. And then I was sort of left with that delicate decision of, well, I have an 8-year-old walking around. Do I have to cut this off, or what do I do here to modify it so that it's not something I have to hide? And then I thought, if I hide it and someone finds it, that looks worse. So
yeah. Catch-22.
Yeah.
Of penis
Yeah,
proportions.
long story short, I neutered it, and
It's your key ring now, right?
it now has one slightly shorter tentacle than the others, and no one's the wiser except for anyone that hears this.
There's nothing I can.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, before we sign off, is there anything else you guys want to plug?
I don't. I'm unless you want to come to high school and get an education, I would be happy to teach you English. But I'm not doing much else in terms of my career. So Jeremy, you've got lots of stuff going on, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, mostly just the beauty in the realm, and the third trade of the realms coming out, or sorry, the third trade. Wow, that would be too good. The third trade of the beauty is coming out, I think, at the end of the month, and but we're really, really hoping that people pick up the realm right now. We have spent a year of our lives putting this thing together, and I feel like it's pretty special.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I think people like it. I'm interested, anxious to see what people. Like Jeremy said, we've spent so long building this thing. It's exciting to kind of get it out there and see people's reaction to it and respond. And we'd like to keep doing it for we definitely don't have any shortage of things we want to do. So hopefully, people respond to it and we can, get all these stories out there.
Yeah, it was cool. At San Diego Comic-Con, the Realm was one of the images on the 25th anniversary banner. So. It was cool.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah.
Neither one of us went to San Diego, so we didn't even know that. But that's cool.
It was it was on the. Well, I mean, maybe there's pictures online on Image Comics, but yeah, it was pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And this opening issue,
Yeah, we loved the hell out of it. So.
Yeah, we brown nosed.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so we will.
Well, there's pretty cool stuff we're going to start releasing and showing and teasing images and stuff. A lot of the covers and stuff. Some of the stuff Jeremy's done. So, if you follow Jeremy or I or the book on Facebook, there's all kinds of stuff on there, and Jeremy posts some pretty cool process stuff for people that dig that kind of thing.
Well, in that case, again, that first issue of The Realm is in comic book stores everywhere and in Comixology if you're more digitally inclined on Wednesday, September 13th. Jeremy, Seth, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Well, those are lovely gents.
Yes.
I think we had a good time, and we love it when they have a good time, too.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Yeah. And the book's awesome.
Yeah.
It really is that jam session of all
Absolutely.
those genres come together. So I remember at the end of last week's episode, we got really excited about seeing Logan Lucky, the prospect of seeing Logan Lucky in theaters. And then we actually did it. Do you guys want to go into, do you want to talk about it?
It's one of those movies that, unfortunately,
Was
I'd
made.
say little less than 20 minutes in, I realized I didn't want to watch this movie anymore. Like, I just wanted to leave, and I don't like leaving movie theaters. But I just did not. It was just so boring.
Yeah.
I just didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
I don't think it was the movie was poorly made. I don't think the performances were awful. It was just boring.
By the time Channing Tatum's character got to the bar and was talking to his brother, Driver, I was just like, It's mostly for me. It was because that conversation was staged like it was a high school play, and like the camera was locked off and could not cut away to different angles or anything. So Channing Tatum is sitting at the bar, and then across from him, behind the bar, Adam Driver's there, and he's cornered off so that he's still facing the audience. Which cool. That's high school acting 101. And just the two of them were just statues talking, and I was like, why? What? And like it was fucking painful for me to watch just that scene, and like instantly I was like, I'm already checking out of this movie. Why are you doing this to me?
It's there are things I really like within the film. Daniel Craig's performance,
wonderful,
great. Riley Coe's performance as the Logan's sister, fantastic.
Although there was some confusion as to whether she was the sister or new girlfriend.
Yeah, maybe I'm dumb, but
while.
when it first started off, I thought they were dating.
Mm.
And then maybe I just wasn't paying attention. And then they were like, aunt. And I was like, aunt?
Yeah.
What is this, Game of Thrones?
And then the heist itself is all right.
Yeah, it did pick up then a little bit.
During the Ocean's 11 part of it was fine. But
7-Eleven.
Oh, self-referential humor. But yeah, like 90% of the movie, well, I guess 85% after what you said, like was just a pain to sit through.
Yeah,
like I was struggling, and I was like, thank God I have to go piss.
Yeah,
I was like, most of the time I'll hold it for a movie because I like to see the whole thing, but I was like, nope.
But this one,
doing it, not this time.
Yeah, it's a movie that it moves narratively it moves at a brisk pace, but the scenes themselves drag.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of that's editing. It's kind of slapdash editing there. Like Seth MacFarlane is like the worst thing in the movie.
What is that?
Even people who I've seen who liked it, like I'm on Letterboxd. I read the papers. I don't, but I was like, when I was kind of logging that I saw Logan Lucky, I was like, what are people saying about it? A lot of positive reviews for some reason. But like the general consensus was that Seth MacFarlane was awful. Yeah. And I was like, well, at least we can agree on something.
Yeah. Can we not agree that Seth MacFarlane's terrible?
Yeah.
And just there for some reason. Hilary Swank's not... I like Hilary Swank, generally speaking, but this is not her film.
So the movie ends, or the movie is wrapping up, and then Hilary Swank comes on the screen, and I'm like, that's weird that they would give such a notable actor, only like 5 minutes of screen time.
Two-time Oscar winner.
Yeah, and then 10 minutes rolled by, and I'm like, oh, it's not the end. Yeah. Oh, God, it's still going. And it went on for like another 20 minutes-ish. And I was like, please.
Well, that's the thing.
Give me the old Yeller.
I thought the movie was over, and like I said, I love Hilary Swank. I'm always happy to see Hilary Swank. But when she showed up, I knew that they weren't bringing in an A-list actress for 5 seconds of screen time.
Yeah, this wasn't a reverse Drew Barrymore.
Oh yeah.
With Scream.
Yeah, Scream.
I did like Sebastian Stan.
Yeah.
He doesn't do a lot, but what he does fine.
Yeah. I guess. Yeah.
That segment where he's the race car driver, right? Yeah. That segment where they go into his house and like he's showing his routine, that really threw me for a loop, because at first I thought it was just like a cutaway, but then it kept going, and like I was like, oh, is this ESPN or whatever channel it was feigning to be, but like kind of like little like mini segment or something like that, like. there's nothing telling me that that's what this is, and I think it's just part of the movie. And I'm like, why would we show this character?
Yeah. It's such a weird film, and not a great one. It's like Steven Soderbergh's like, I can make a Coen Brothers movie. No, you can't.
Yeah, solid D.
Mm.
A solid D.
C-ish, maybe C-.
Yeah, I'm right around there with you guys.
Yeah, if I had to grade this one. But, I've started watching Riverdale recently.
Oh, yeah, baby.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, I was watching, my general reaction whenever I watch an episode of Riverdale, and I mean this in the best possible way, is just like, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is this?
So fucking fun, though, right?
It's fun, yeah, but there are, like, moments where, like, Josie and the Pussycats have, like, that random, like, disco dance number, and then, like, there's, like, parental disappointment.
Yeah.
And, like, there's, like, a random, like, zombie horror scene, like, that kicks off one episode. And
Yeah.
just, like,
How great was that one episode where it's, like, OG Archie?
Oh, yeah.
That was so cool.
Yeah,
just,
with the 1950s.
Just for that couple seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That horror nightmare of Jugheads.
Yeah.
How far are you?
I'm about halfway.
How about halfway? Okay. Yeah, it gets, like I said, I was talking to you yesterday. It's like, it gets weirder. And that's all for the better.
And better.
Yeah. Better and a little bloodier.
A little bloody.
Yeah.
Another murder.
Yeah.
There's death.
I might rewatch the series since it's all on Netflix.
Yeah.
Friend of the show, Corey Murphy. She called me up because she binged it.
She's already done.
She's like, I love this show, and I knew she was. I was hoping she would like it.
She says she's always been a CW kind of like
yeah.
Vampire Diaries or Teen Wolf over on MTV.
Teen Wolf.
Yeah. So
that's good. No, I'm glad you're digging Riverdale because, like I said, out of the three of us, by far, the Archie aficionado. So I was hoping you weren't going to watch it. Be like, fuck this.
Yeah.
So.
No, I mean, my thing is, like, in all the advertising, like, all the print advertising or online advertising, like, it's a subversive take on Archie. It's like, do you even know what subversive means, you fucks?
I don't.
Yeah. Neither do they, so,
Huh.
yeah. It's subversive. Blow it out your ass. You finished Game of Thrones? I guess we all finished Game of Thrones,
we all
Chris.
did. It's funny, like, a couple things inspired it, and one of the things was this show where we had a guest on and we were talking about
Zach Kaplan.
Game of Thrones. And thank you, because I honestly could not remember. No disrespect to Zach Kaplan, I just couldn't remember what episode that was that we talked about it. And I was just like, man, I need to fucking watch this. And a bunch of my friends at work had binged it. So, yeah, I mean, look, I think season 7 felt a little rushed. I mean, it's only 7 episodes. Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of... I was talking to some people at work about it, too. Like, a lot of what's revealed in the finale, like, I felt like we knew already. A couple things, maybe not, like, we didn't know, like, names, but we knew lineage.
Yeah. Maybe not, like, exact circumstances.
Yeah, exactly, but we kind of had an idea. But, I mean, it's still, like, it's good. It's fun. You know, spoilers for Game of Thrones in 3, 2, 1. You know, I'm excited that, you know, it's not the episode where the Hound comes back, but I'm excited that he's still around, and we're going to get the Hound Mountain face-off. I mean, that's the thing I'm looking forward to most of 7. Fuck the wall. Already came down. But, you know, fuck all that other shit. I just want to see the two brothers go at it.
All the big stuff is really telegraphed.
Mm-hmm. But, I mean, it's funny because, like, the show now, like, with, you know, the Army of the Dead coming and the wall being down, like, it feels like not a different show, but it feels like a different show. You know what I mean? Like, it is so huge. Like, it's massive now, like, in terms of, like, what the fuck is going down. Because, like, I mean, season 8's got to just be all insanity, right? I mean, there's going to be no time for talking.
Maybe half an episode of resolution.
Been like, you know, hey, they're coming. Shit.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're already on their way back to Dragonstone.
Mm-hmm.
To then mount the defense of the North, and they're gonna find that Eastwatch is already fucking done.
Yeah, and that Cersei's basically like, I lied. Yeah. And I'm really excited to see.
And Euron's going to go get the Gold Company. Yeah.
And I'm really excited to see what's going to happen with Jaime, because Jaime's one of those characters. When I first started watching it, like very long ago with the first season, I was like, I don't really. I mean, he has the conventional hero looks. He should be like the guy, but I was like, I don't know, he's whatever. And then it's really, is it season 2 or season 3 where he's with Brienne of Tarth? They go on that journey together. Is that 3?
It's 3, really.
That's where he really,
he's still in captivity. In 2.
Yeah, that's where he really starts to like flesh out. You know what I mean? And really become an interesting character. And he's just gotten more and more interesting and fascinating, and I've liked him a lot as he's gone on. And what he does takes a stand in the finale against his sister. I think really is going to send shockwaves through the entire story. Yeah. Because I mean that's all she has left, really. You know, I think the fact that she's pregnant. I think that she feels invincible, that she has another child, on the way, that there's another Lannister. But it's cool. I mean, it's cool. I mean, like, it was so much fun binging that show. Like, it's not as much as I thought it was a show about just killing off characters. Like, it really isn't. And I think that was something I was a little unfair with, just with that first season, and being like, oh, that's, hearing about it in other, through friends and stuff and on Twitter, like, oh, it's nothing. But it really is a solid story. Even in the weaker seasons or episodes, they make you care about the characters, man. So when they do kill one off, it stings, it hurts. But when they kill off one of the bad characters, it's awesome. And for my money, the Battle of the Bastards, I thought it might have been. I was afraid it was going to be overhyped because people were like, "You are not fucking ready." And then I watched it, and I watched it again, and then I bought it on Vudu. I was like, yeah, everyone's like, watch the finale now, and I was like, no, I'm just gonna watch Battle of the Bastards again. I mean, that is some primo shit, man. That is a fantastic episode, and directed by the guy that did Hard Home, which I know is your favorite.
Which is another big battle episode.
I mean, all the battle episodes are just so well done, and you can see the evolution of it. It's kind of like Queen, where like you can hear sections of songs on their first couple albums that, oh, this is what basically becomes Bohemian Rhapsody by the time Night at the Opera rolls around. You see that in Hard Home. You see that in The Watchers on the Wall, which is one of my all-time favorite episodes. You see that in The Siege of Blackwater. Elements of what becomes holy shit when the shit hits the fan in Battle of the Bastards. And then you get that too in episode 6. I don't remember what it's called in season 7. You get that with as Sam says, the Magnificent Seven.
Beyond the Wall, yeah. And the Hound just breaking off a jawbone of a skeleton, and just that skeleton looking so annoyed. Yeah.
Did he take it from the skeleton head?
Yeah, he broke it off the skeleton, the jaw off the skeleton head. Yeah, that was great. Oh fuck.
Yeah, mandibles.
Yeah.
You getting anything lately, Chris? Other than suffer with us through Logan Lucky?
I did get to have a little bit of a palate cleanser of a movie treat. I got to see an old classic, Terminator Dos, Judgment Day. I got to see it in 3D. It was re-released this week as a special re-edit of it. I was for me, it was more so like, ooh, I could see Terminator 2 in theaters, because I was too young to have seen it back when it first came out, and it was really cool. And like there was nothing crazy cool about like the 3D stuff. Like every once in a while, T-1000 did like the little stabby thing coming out of his finger or whatever, and that like looked cool in the 3D. But for the most part, like it wasn't shot to be in 3D, so not a whole lot of stuff played with the mechanics of 3D. The opening scene looked really good with like, panning across just like a valley of skeleton heads. And like, I was like, oh, cause they really fucked with the depth and stuff like that. But yeah, it was just a really fun experience to see, such a big part of my childhood on, going from the VHS that I had, or the Laserdisc that I picked up later in life, just watching that and now seeing it in a big theater with a big sound system, for better or for worse, in 3D as well. Like at no point for me did the 3D ever get annoying, like, but I've never been one of those people that like gets headaches or anything like that from 3D. I just kind of, after a while, your brain gets used to it, so the novelty of it just kind of wears off, and you're just watching a movie. unless they constantly are doing like 3D gags, like Friday the 13th Part 3D. Although that one will give me headaches because the home video transfer of it was poorly done. But that's that. But yeah, no, it was lots of fun. I got to go see it with my friend Mike because he had been talking about wanting to hang out because we haven't seen each other for a couple months, probably at this point. He was like, "Hey, you want to hang out?" And I just happened to see that was playing, and I was like, "Hey, you want to make a day of it?" So we went to Tyson's, got dinner, hung out for a bit, watched Terminator 2, geeked out like men.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, pretty much that's. Oh, I also picked up a shift at the bar because they were showing the McGregor Mayweather fight.
Oh, they did?
Yeah,
I was curious about that.
yeah, and we actually had quite a full house, not a packed house, but a full house with Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen. Unlike Fuller House, bam, got him. But yeah, no, it was fine. You know, we had it showing on every TV as well as the projector, and yeah, the pretty much every table had some butts in it. A couple people standing.
The asses.
Yeah, and it was an all right night. No, you know, no one really caused any trouble. We had a couple people get pissed off that we were charging a cover, but here
That's what happens
yeah.
when it's a pay-per-view.
Yeah, exactly. Pro tip. If you're going to a bar to see a pay-per-view, that bar had to pay a couple $1,000s to show that pay-per-view because you have to pay a certain fee per occupancy. Like, it's not the pay-per-view doesn't care, you know, how many TVs you're showing it on. Pay-per-view doesn't care how many people show up to the bar. They're charging you a rate on how many people you can fit in your bar, you know, regardless of how many people show up. So, yeah, don't get pissed off if a bar is charging you a cover to see a pay-per-view. Go home and pay 3 times as much to watch it on your home TV. Sorry, that was the annoying part of the night. The fight, I never really watched boxing before, so I was like, I guess this is a good showing of bouts. People in the crowd were cheering at things, so I was like, okay, I guess that was cool. Again, I'm the wrestling guy, so I'm used to a lot more fanfare and pomp and circumstance, I guess. So I was like, cool, he punched a guy. No one's jumping off the top rope. What the hell? But no, it was fun. It was an interesting experience. Going with the whole being used to watching wrestling thing, I was a little annoyed at how I think it was 2 matches, maybe 3 of them, definitely 2, finished in just the referee intervening without a guy falling on the floor or anything like that. I was like, oh, what? And, like, I get it because I've complained about it before with, like, my friends who watch MMA fights, especially with, like, the older or the earlier Ronda Rousey matches where they would be, like, 30 seconds long and the ref would just be like, oh, gotta stop it because Ronda Rousey's punching this person too many times at once. And I'm like, man, if I had paid to watch or if I had paid for this pay-per-view just to watch the Ronda Rousey fight, I would have felt like I did not get my money's worth out of this, you know. So, like, that was weird to me, but I understand, like, this is actual combat and stuff like that, so people get actual hurt and actual concussed, and hopefully these referees are trained in the best ways to, you know, see things, you know, happening before someone gets, you know, permanently injured or something like that. So I will, you know, while I was watching, I was like, well, I guess that's the norm. Cool. McGregor lasted 10 rounds or 9 rounds and then, you know, into the 10th in a sport that he was not as trained in as anything else. So more props to him for showing up, and props to both of them for getting that fucking payday. Yeah. You know, I'd let Floyd Mayweather punch me in the face for what was it, $10 million?
No, like $100 million.
$100 million?
Yeah, well,
I would let him punch me in the face for 10.
McGregor got about 100-some million, and I think Floyd got about 300 million.
Yeah, for winning or just
in general.
Oh, okay.
He's the
bigger
draw.
Yeah, because he came out of retirement.
Yep,
and then he had his ain't gonna be no rematch moment at the end of the fight.
Well, with going 50-0,
yeah,
he broke Rocky Marciano's record of 49-0, and so he goes, that's pretty good. That's it.
Yeah.
And this is the biggest. I mean, in terms of the spectacle of it, it was pretty fascinating. I mean, I don't follow either sport really, but I knew that when the rumblings were going on about like years ago or however long it was about McGregor and Mayweather possibly fighting, I was like, that'll never happen. Like because it's the idea of like boxing MMA, because one's going to have to submit to the idea of the other. They're not going to have Floyd Mayweather go to MMA, and so McGregor would do boxing. He's got everything. He's got nothing to lose with that fight, though. You know what I mean? Because any kind of expert in terms of boxing would see that like. Well, it's Mayweather's it's Mayweather's house.
He's got the home team advantage.
He's got the home team advantage, and the idea of like what if McGregor slips into the idea of like muscle memory of I'm going to throw a kick, or I'm going to throw an elbow, like just the muscle memory
that
of
was
it.
What
So
I was
they really broke down the rules of boxing for him, and to go in there and go against, and I thought it was a fascinating thing to happen. I think it was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I was wondering if Ultra Beam was going to do that.
Yeah, it's the first time they've hosted a pay-per-view.
Yeah, because I was saying, like, there's the short time I worked there and just going there as just a customer, they would not. I remember when I think it was Ronda Rousey when she lost the first time. We were all working together at the time, and when they didn't have it playing, and I remember someone came over the mic. I was like, "Yo, Ronda Rousey lost."
Yeah,
it was kind of like that's how we got it, around everybody, which is pretty wild.
Yeah. Yeah, but the turnout was good. I think part of it was one. Now the sports bar across the street closed down, so and they were like the only place in the city that would show like fighting pay-per-views. So we knew that we had a potential to draw people, and then of course Conor McGregor, Irish, and he was fighting for the pride of Ireland, apparently. So like there was that whole thing to tie in because it's an Irish pub, and I was surprised again, much like you. I don't follow either sport, but I was surprised at how many people were there cheering on Conor McGregor. But then like the idea that it was an Irish pub kicked in, so I was like, oh okay, I can see people coming to an Irish pub because they want to cheer on Conor McGregor. I don't know enough about either guy to have really been like, I'm going to cheer for this guy, except for like what I saw them doing their promos. And I was like, wow, this McGregor guy seems like a complete asshole, so I was more apt to cheer on Mayweather.
That dandy.
Yeah, sure.
Him and his McGregor, his cornermen that were basically all dressed up like Victorian bartenders.
Yeah. Yeah, he was being cheered on by the newsies.
Yes. Yeah. Look at him. He is the king of New York.
Is that Christian Bale?
Yeah, sure. Cool. Well, thanks again to Jeremy and Seth for coming on the show. Again, The Realm is out in comic book stores everywhere on Wednesday, September 13th, and on Comixology. This has been another installment of Catching Up. I'm Sam.
I'm Chris.
I'm Jake.
Fried chicken.
Thank you very much.
Good night, Eric Bana.
This has been another Geek Out production. If you enjoyed what you heard, hey, we've got a special episode every Friday. Of course, there's the usual Catching Up show every Wednesday. And you get book club episodes just about every Tuesday these days. Thanks for listening.